Well, long day, everyone, but hopefully it's been worth it because our next speaker for the day is a New York Times bestselling author. The Wall Street Journal calls him a top influencer on the web. Forbes says he's one of the top 10 marketers, and Entrepreneur Magazine says he's created one of the 100 most brilliant companies. He was recognized as a top 100 entrepreneur under the age of 30 by President Obama and a top 100 entrepreneur under the age of 35 by the United Nations. And the speaker is also not an alien to NASSCOM. He actually joined the inaugural NASSCOM Product Conclave in Bangalore in 2012, and where he spoke to a packed audience, and I was very fortunate to be there. Just before we bring Neil in, just a bit of housekeeping. All your Q&A questions should go to the Q&A section only, where you can also upvote questions. So the most upvoted questions are the ones that I'm going to bring up with Neil. So without further ado, please welcome Mr. Neil Patel, who will be speaking on the future of SEO, 9 hacks that'll transform your traffic. Neil, take it away.
Thanks for having me, everyone. So let me share my screen so that way you can, let's see, unlock here. There you go. So funny enough, it's actually having me trying to restart Skype, or Chrome. But either way, I'm going to just start talking because the tactics aren't too hard. And either way, I was going to end up making it more of a discussion because I couldn't end up breaking down all the strategies within 20 minutes. Okay, so I've been doing SEO for many, many years now. I've been doing it probably for 15 to 20 years. And I've learned a few things, okay? And this is what I predict will end up happening in 2021. And it's not what most people think. The first thing is when you look at traffic right now, Bill Gates once said, content is king. Literally, he said content is king. And if you look at the key cornerstone to SEO, and if you look at, hey, what really drives SEO traffic? The big thing that we're seeing is text. If you create text, you end up generating more traffic. If you don't create text, you don't end up generating more traffic. But here's a quick stat that most people don't realize. Did you know that there's roughly 1 billion blogs on the internet? Now think about that for a minute. 1 billion, okay? That's not the amount of websites, that's just the amount of blogs. So if there's 1 billion blogs, how much content do you think is being produced on a daily basis? It's actually not a few million or even 5 million. The number is astronomical. So much so that my traffic has grown to over 10 million visitors a month, but it's through barely creating content. And you're probably wondering, wait, how is it that you're ranking getting more traffic and barely creating content? See, the thing is with over 1 billion blogs, there's too much content for Google to pick from. There's content literally on anything. And the amount of content Michelle, can you figure it out? Sorry about that, baby's crying. The amount of content out there is just astronomical. And because of this, what we've ended up seeing is if you create more content, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get more traffic. So what we ended up doing is we only write 4 articles a month. Okay, just think about that. 4 articles a month, but then we update over 100 articles a month. So we're spending the majority of our time taking our old articles and updating them. And that is the first hack for you. And the reason this is very important is because what's happening is because there's all this content out there, the people who update their content and keep it fresh and relevant, Google is more likely to rank you and keep you ranking higher than if you just keep producing new content, because eventually the new content tends to go down in rankings, but the old content that has a lot of those links that stays updated tends to do better. And when I mean updating, I'm not talking about changing the URL. I'm talking about adding paragraphs, deleting information that's not relevant, just doing whatever creates the best user experience. The second thing that we're seeing is going international. One of my friends works at Google, and she was telling me, Neil, the best way to grow your Google traffic is to go international. I'm like, what do you mean? And she's just like, think about it. the majority of the world doesn't speak English. I'm like, yes, I know. Like you look at regions like India, people speak so many different languages. Look at regions like South America, again, people speak, Spanish, Portuguese. And she's just like, yeah, but the majority of the content on Google is in English, but the majority of the searchers on Google are not in English and they lack content in all these other languages. So the moment I started changing my content, and I still have it in English, but now I have 9 other languages. And the moment we started adding other languages, that's what helped us get to 9 to 10 million visits a month. And when we look at our traffic in the United States alone, it went from a little bit more than 50% to now it's roughly 13%. Just think about that. Out of the 10 million visits, only 13% are from the United States. And that's because of internationalization. And what we found is it's helped make our businesses generate more money substantially. The third hack that we saw was page experience. So Google's releasing something called page experience algorithm in 2021. And part of this is they're looking at things like bounce rates, time on site, user experience. And one of the factors that's already rolled out right now is speed. So what ended up happening is I'm very frugal. My mom always taught me as a Gujarati, Neil, it's easier to save money than it is to make it. Just don't spend it. And I tend not to spend money on anything. I literally, I will have an old iPhone and I don't want a new one because it costs money. Now, technically, I have the new iPhone, but that's because someone gave it to me as a gift for free. Other than that, I would still have one that's 5 years old. And one day I was getting more traffic and my hosting costs went just through the roof. And I just was kept spending more and more money on hosting. And then all of a sudden my hosting bill was starting to get to $3,000-$4,000 a month. And I was like, this is too expensive. I don't want to spend this. So one of my engineers said, Neil, why don't we host our site on a CDN? I'm like, CDN, that's a content delivery network where they put your site on all these servers around the world. So that way when people in India visit my site, it loads faster for them. But then I was just like, that's only for static files and images. And he's like, no, we can also put non-static files and images on a CDN, just no one really does that. So the moment we did that, my hosting costs went down to around $2,300 a month. Still expensive, but I saved a few $1,000s a month. But then my Google Page Speed score from the Google Page Speed Insights, it's a free tool that they offer, it went to over 90. And my site started loading faster. And we started seeing roughly a 4 to 5% increase in SEO traffic. So it was huge. The next factor I have for you is branding. I speak at conferences like NASSCOM. I love NASSCOM. I wish you guys had an in-person event. I know through coronavirus you can't. And I wish I was there because I haven't been to India in such a long time. I miss it. Funny enough, living in America, my favorite food is still Indian food because I grew up with it. But, I miss India in general. I even thought at one point of potentially moving to India because I love it so much. And I believe the economy is just booming and it's huge future. So when you look at things like India, when you look at things like what's happening all around the world, one thing that I've learned is if you want to do well, you need to build a brand. If you want to buy shoes, you don't just buy any shoes. You may buy Nike shoes. If you want to buy a car, you may want Toyota, Range Rover, which is owned by Tata, right? My wife has a Range Rover, which is an India company. And you don't just Google for all these things. You want a credit card, you look at Visa, MasterCard. So what we've done over the years is you speak at conferences, you go out there and build your brand, you do whatever it takes to get known. And one concept in marketing is called the rule of 7. When someone sees or interacts with your brand 7 times, they're much more likely to remember it. So doing live on social media through things like Restream, doing email marketing, doing push notifications, doing Facebook Messenger bots, all those things helps you keep engaging with your existing audience, which then causes them to remember your brand. And when people see your brand more, what we've seen is when you get those Google queries for people Googling your brand name and clicking to your site, it causes your rankings for everything to go up. It's also one of the reasons I speak. So go out there and build your brand. And when we started focusing on branding, a lot of our terms like digital marketing and online marketing that we we're trying to rank on Google shot up to the top of page 1. The next factor I have for you, if you're doing SEO, you're going to build links. So everyone's like, you need more websites linking to you to rank higher. If you get 2, 3, 4, 5,000 links, you're going to rank better if you get 200 links. But I have to tell you, that's a big misconception. I just created a YouTube video on it. When you look at a lot of the sites that rank at the top, yes, it used to be that you need to build a lot of links, but Google knows everyone's building a lot of links and they know it's artificially inflated. So what we've seen is if you build less links, you build quality links, and you take the slow and steady route, your rankings actually increase faster than if you build too many links, because they know it's unnatural. And if you build too many unnatural links, you got to keep building more and more just to try to rank at the top. So actually slow down your link building. Even if your competition has 3,000 links, my recommendation is to only build 1/5 of what your competition is building, literally 1/5, and take the slow and steady route, and then you will start ranking higher. The next factor I have for you is, this is a simple hack, okay? In the sidebar of all your pages, or your site, link to your most popular pages. You'll notice I do that on neilpatel.com. Read any blog post. In the sidebar, you'll see a tab and I link to all my most popular pages, because those pages you're giving more juice, more equity to. And when you give them more juice and more equity, what ends up happening is those pages just rank higher because you're linking to them from all pages. But here's the thing, most marketers don't do this, because when they add those links, their rankings don't increase right away. When you add those links, it takes roughly 6 months after you add them to see the increase in rankings. So you have to be patient, and most people aren't. So if you do that, you can do quite well. The next factor that I ended up learning, and this one was the hard way, and this is for YouTube SEO. YouTube is booming. It's the second most popular search engine. Funny enough, it's owned by Google as well. So I learned, SEO, and SEO is traditionally slow and steady wins the race. And I assumed, and I was wrong on this, with YouTube, slow and steady would win the race, but it's actually wrong. See, on YouTube, what I ended up finding is, if your video gets a lot of views in the first 24 hours, you naturally rank higher within that 24 hours, and you can rank at the top for almost any keyword if your video does extremely well within the first 24 hours. So every time I publish a video now, I send out an email blast, a push notification blast, I send a messenger blast, I send out a text blast. And by doing all of this, my traffic on YouTube is going through the roof in the first 24 hours, but then it dies down. But what happens is my rankings skyrocket to the top within a few days, and then I keep getting continual steady traffic from YouTube. So try that out. Every time you publish a video, just push it out, do a blast, do a crazy hard promotion, do whatever you can to make sure that it's seen. Okay. The next hack I have for you is page level. We talked about the page experience algorithm update. So one thing I want you to do, I want everyone to do this. It's really simple. Go run a heat map test. You can use Crazy, you can use Hotjar, you can use whatever you want. And look at where people are scrolling, clicking on your most important pages that are getting traffic, and look where they're getting stuck. You can see that people may be clicking on images that aren't clickable. You could see that people may be getting lost and just bouncing away. When you see the experiences and what elements on the page that are causing people to stop scrolling or stop clicking through, you can then go and fix this, which in 2021 will increase your rankings. Another hack, and this is an easy way to get more clicks. See, Google tries to base their SEO purely on what users want. Yes, it's an algorithm, but they care about users. So when you look at YouTube, Google SEO, they want to also rank the sites at the top that people are clicking on. If you build more links than your competition and you do everything correctly and have the best on-page SEO, but no one likes your content, no one's clicking on your listing on Google, they're not going to rank you at the top. So one way to get higher rankings is to get more clicks. And you can use tools like ClickFlow to optimize your rankings and your clicks, because it optimizes your text so people click on your result over the competition. And when you're using tools like this, what we ended up learning is adding things like the date to the end of the title helps create a lot of clicks. So for example, how to start a blog in 2021, right? By adding that year, you get a lot of clicks. Now, the last hack I have for you that I want you to check out, and then we'll get into Q&A, is create a tool. So if you go to the neilpatel.com website, I have a tool called Uber Suggest. And if you look at Uber Suggest, it's a free SEO tool. Sure, there's some paid plans, but I give away more for free than any other competitor. Now, when we look at this and we look at this tool that you can use, that tool generates more links and more traffic than creating content. So the whole purpose of this is you can keep creating content, updating it. But what we found is if you create a tool, you can get rankings quicker and get those links with less work. And what you can end up doing with that is very simple, is you don't have to build tools from scratch. There's sites like codecanyon.net that allow you to go buy tools for $5, $10, $20 and put it on your website and call it your own tool. So you're buying a license and you can use it however you want, or you can pay companies like Net Solutions to build you tools as well. So that's it. Let's get into some Q&A and answer some questions.
Okay, Neil. Okay, so we've just lost one question. I'll try and get that back. But the number one question at this point in time is how to build quality backlinks.
Sure. So if you want to build quality backlinks, the easiest thing is to build tools and release them for free. They continually build more backlinks than anything else. The second tactic I have for you is an infographic. So if you see a lot of popular content around the web, and the Uber Suggest tool, you can go to type in any keyword and click on content ideas in the left-hand navigation, and it'll tell you all the popular content around the web for that article. What you can do, and this is interesting, okay? What you can do is then go and create an infographic for the articles that are already popular. If you take that content that's already popular and you turn it into infographic, you can reach out to all the people that shared it, ask them to share it. The more people that view it, the more likely they'll link to you. And then you can take all the people who linked to that article and said, hey, I noticed you linked to X, Y, and Z article. I created an infographic with the same information that's easier to understand. Feel free to also link to it as well. And a lot of those people will link to it, around 11, 12% of the people that link to the original article.
Okay, thanks. That question came from Yash Mehta. The next question is, once the site reaches the top rank, maintaining it is the hardest part. What tips do you suggest to maintain that position in SERPs?
The easiest way to maintain it is to continually update that piece of content. So if it's very, very important and it makes the majority of your revenue, update it once a week. If it is important but not as important, update it once a month. If it's an evergreen piece of content, doesn't need to be updated as much, but it's still an important page, update it once a quarter. And when you're updating it, the key is to update the article with relevant information. So if any news change, update it. If anything is not relevant anymore, delete it. Like if the article is on MySpace, no one talks about MySpace anymore. You may want to delete that part and talk about TikTok instead. And then the other thing you would want to do is add videos to it if it makes experience better, any more images, any animated GIFs, whatever you can do to just keep the content fresh, up to date, and relevant.
Okay, excellent. Next question is, from where can I come to know which language people are searching for my keywords? So this is to your second point, internationalization.
Sure. So you don't even have to look at it that way. What I want you to look at it is which countries have a large GDP and a large population. And those are the countries you want to expand into. So like our number one country that we're expanding into is India. We already have 2 offices in India, one in Coimbatore, I think I'm pronouncing it right, and one in Bangalore. I've never been to Coimbatore, so I don't know what it looks like, but I heard it's a nice place. And if you look at India, it's one of the biggest booming economies. India will be massive within 5 to 10 years. Mark my word. I think it'll be one of the biggest economies. I think the top economies in the world will be India, United States, and China. I don't know which order, but I think those will be the 3 biggest economies. It's just a question of when. And when I mean big, I'm talking about 10 plus trillion dollars a year in GDP.
Okay. The next question is, how do you get your website on the top of the charts in a competitive market? And are there any keyword limit per website? But let me also ask you this question. So SEO obviously is too competitive, and SMEs or small businesses have little money. So do you really think that spending money or bandwidth on SEO is going to help them build a moat? So what's a good time for them to start spending money, given how everything's so competitive?
The good time is now. It's not. It's yes, it's competitive, but there's still so much room to do well. You just have to be slow and not slow. You just have to be steady with your work, and you have to be patient. If you do it for 6 months to a year, you'll do well. If you give up after 3 months, you won't do well. And if you're really patient and you wait 3 years plus, and you constantly do it, that's when the real big results kick in.
Okay, and so the question is, how do you get your website up? I think you mentioned the 9 or 10 points, but is there anything else that you'd like to add? And is there a keyword limit per website?
There isn't a keyword limit per website. The biggest thing I would like to add is stick within your niche. Google doesn't want to rank sites on everything. Sure, Wikipedia ranks for everything, but you're not Wikipedia, nor am I. There was this company in the United States called About.com. They were bought by New York Times. Very, very old company. They took majority of their content and they deleted it. And the site was about everything, and the site was dying down. So they took that site and broke it down into many smaller sites. One site just on health and fitness, one site just on business, one site just on technology. And when they put the content in those niche specific sites and they focus, their traffic went through the roof and their revenue went up. So Google doesn't want to rank sites on everything. They want to rank niche sites.
Okay. Next question. News sites talking about the product and service and link to your sites, are they solid backlinks? So not
They're
okay.
solid.
Right.
Yes, solid backlinks.
Okay. Got it. So before I get some more questions, what's been the impact of COVID on SEO?
Funny enough, it's caused more people to search. Traffic's through the roof for most businesses in most regions. Even when businesses open back up through a vaccine, I bet you SEO and e-commerce is still going to be more popular and it's still going to grow.
Okay. And since you're a marketing guru, not just an SEO guru, if you go beyond SEO, what are the other things that small businesses can do to generate leads?
If you go beyond SEO, other things that small businesses can do to generate leads is when you can capture more leads to your website, exit pop-ups, do opt-ins within the sidebar. Another thing that a small business can do is going live on social media. So if you just go live, see, these social platforms want to beat television networks. They want to beat, I don't know what television channels you have in India, but they want to beat your Sky or whatever it is. And or my mom watches ZTV. I think it's called ZTV. Uh, but when you look at all these television channels, Facebook, Google, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, they all want to beat these television channels. So if you go live, if you have barely any followers and you go live from your phone, what you'll find is they'll spread that content to people who are not even your fans, who are not even your followers. And that gets you a ton of traffic. And when you're talking to those people and they have a captivated audience, you can sell them on the phone and convince them to purchase your product, your services, become a lead as well.
Okay. If an SME has some extra cash and wants to generate quick leads, what's the best way of spending that money? Would you say paid search? Is that an option?
Paid search and paid social is the easiest way.
Okay.
If you're in B2B, LinkedIn is amazing. If you're in B2C, Facebook is amazing and Google is amazing. B2B, technically, Facebook, Google, and LinkedIn all work as well.
Okay. Let's talk about podcasts and video. And I know you invest a lot of time and money on that. So would you recommend the small businesses to also invest in that? Is that a good time, or a podcast, for example, is getting too competitive, and try
No,
new
podcast
mediums
is
like?
not competitive. There's barely any podcasts on the internet. You should create a podcast, especially if you're in India and you're targeting the India market. Podcasting is booming in India and it's yet to take off. Create a podcast right away. The next thing I would do is focus on video, but I would do podcasting before videos. It's just not competitive in India. It's actually not competitive around the world at all.
Okay. Another question from Yash Mehta. How do you approach keyword research? So how do you approach it?
So I use Uber Suggest and I type in any keywords related to my website. It'll show me what's popular and what has a low SEO difficulty score. Those are the keywords I go after first. I can also put in my competitor domain into Ubersuggest, and it'll show me all the keywords that they rank for in the left-hand navigation. Under the left navigation, just click on the tab that's called, or the link that's called keywords, and you can put in your competitor URL, and it'll show you all the keywords they rank for.
And not to mention, it's free as well.
Yes.
Okay, and since we're talking about Ubersuggest and tools, could you, marketing is very, very complex with literally thousands and thousands of tools. So maybe you could talk to us about your marketing stack or what you recommend. So Ubersuggest is one, but from an SEO perspective, what are some of the other tools? From a general marketing perspective, maybe you could talk about, what are some tools that really impressed you?
Sure. So, from a marketing perspective, my favorite tool that no one talks about is Google Data Studio. It's free. So you all know about Google Analytics, but the problem right now with businesses is becoming omni-channel on the internet. There's data from Facebook, there's data from LinkedIn and Instagram, and all the sites out there. So Google Data Studio can take all the data from all these places, put it in one central place so you can see all your stats and data in one centralized location, and it gives you analysis reports, and you can use that to make better decisions. So that's one tool that I love. The next tool that I love is Restream. Restream is a tool that allows you to go live on all the channels at once. So if you're going to go live, why go live on just YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or Twitter? Why not go live on all the social platforms at once? It's not any extra work. You can use the software like Restream and just click a few buttons, and you're live literally on all the platforms.
Excellent, thank you. My final question, unless anyone's posting any other question within the next minute or so, because this is more like a quick fire round, and Neil's answering questions really, really quickly. So Neil, what are some of the marketing trends that you're excited about in 2021? So what should we be focused on?
Voice search. So in the US, already 50% of the searches, according to ComScore, are voice related. Now, when I say I'm excited about voice searches, what most people don't realize is voice commerce is booming. According to OCNC, within the next few years, voice commerce should grow to over $40 billion a year. So people are going to start ordering through these devices like Alexa, Google Home, Siri, etc. So I'm excited about that. There's tools like Jetson AI that make voice search easy to monetize. So that's one trend that I'm really bullish on. The next trend that I'm seeing is a combination of hardware and marketing. So we're not there yet, but e-commerce is booming. And AI and augmented reality and machine learning and all these technologies are getting more and more popular. One thing that we're seeing is, especially with COVID, people want those experiences where you can wear like Oculus devices or virtual reality devices, and it'll be like you're in a mall and you're shopping with your friends, and you can feel like you're trying on clothes even though you're not. And then boom, you make a purchase, and then within minutes, Geo or Amazon, I don't know, Geo has an e-commerce company. I don't know what it's called. I think it's called Geo as well, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And they'll have a drone that delivers it to you within 30 minutes, which is actually going to be quicker than sitting in traffic in India. Right. So I believe that trend is going to be big, and that's the second one that I'm very bullish and excited about.
Okay, follow up on voice search. So how exactly do you get your site ready for voice search? What do you need to do?
So there's schema markup. Schema markup, you can just Google it. There's schema markup generators by Google, and it helps makes your site compatible, where it tells Google, hey, this is what everything is on my page, and this is what it means. The next thing is, a lot of people use voice search to ask questions. So make sure when you're asking questions on your site, and Ubersuggest, when you're doing keyword research, there's a questions area in the keyword ideas report. It tells you all the questions related to your space that people are typing in. So you can create content around those questions and answer them in 1 or 2 sentences. So then you're much more likely to get pulled by voice search. And the next thing is to have your website load fast. If your website doesn't load fast, it's going to make it harder for the crawlers to pull data from your website, which means you won't do as well for voice search in the long run.
Okay, that's it from me, Neil. Any other topics that you think you should have covered but haven't? Maybe you can spend another couple of minutes or so.
I think we've covered everything. The last piece of advice I have for you guys is, I know I discussed a lot of stuff here, and thank you everyone for your time. you don't have to do everything you learned today here at NASSCOM. Just pick one or two things, whether it's from me or another speaker. If you just do one thing and you implement it, you're going to be better off. Most people who go to conferences, I hate to say it, don't implement anything they learned. They're like, I'm excited, I learned all this information, but then a week goes by and they didn't implement anything. If you just implement one thing, you're going to be better off. And that's my recommendation.
Thank you so much, Neil. I've learned so much from you, especially hearing your podcast, Marketing School with Eric. That's a fabulous, fabulous resource. So, in case you're not listening to that podcast, please go ahead and do that. You learn so much. But I really appreciate you taking time, Neil, getting up early in the morning in LA and joining this session. We do hope COVID's behind us very soon and we can invite you to India once again. Thank you so much.